skills. But this is also what's difficult. And so when you have a Living Well consumer group, you'll often find that people have many different skills and abilities and experience in setting and achieving goals. And so we start with helping people to think about, what are you really ready for? Are you ready to pursue a small, medium, or a large goal? This is on page 11 in the workbook. And so we, in the table at the bottom of page 11, we kind of indicate just some ideas of what's the difference between a small goal, a medium goal, and a large goal. And then on the way to getting to these quality of life goals, we ask this question frequently: what would make life better for you? And something that it's just a starting place for people. Another way to kind of get in touch with this is, what have you done so far? Maybe it's been a while since people have pursued goals, but most people can identify things that they're proud of, that they're happy about. And so if we can get them to connect with things that they've done, that's a good starting place. And also, this is exercise 1 on page 12. It's a group exercise. It's a way for you as the facilitator to begin to get a sense of, what kinds of goals have people in the workshop pursued, and are people kind of ready to pursue small, medium, or large goals? And again, this is an opportunity to begin thinking about that and to ask them to think about that. What are you ready for at this point? We also talk a little bit about the difference between desires and goals, and I think it's worth highlighting in the workshop that everybody's got desires. We all have things that we want. When we take a desire and we write it in a particular way and we work with it, it becomes a goal. So that's simply the difference. A goal is a desire that's been written in a specific way, and we're going to work on achieving it. It's not just something that we want. And at the bottom of page 12, there's a real important point here that, again, people come to these workshops with all different backgrounds and current needs. And some people that find their way to the Living Well groups might have very, very basic needs that still need to be met. That is, their housing may not be real stable. They may have needs around transportation. They might have needs around even food security for some people. So we make the point in this that as you start to think about what makes life better, when the basics of life are not quite in place, or when we're still working on those are very meaningful and important goals. So in this chapter, one of the things that we're trying to get to with folks is this idea of what might a quality of life goal be. And we've got 3 different sections now that we get into. The first section is your past. The second section is currently, and the third section is future. And what we've found in developing the curriculum is that these have kind of increasing degrees of difficulty, if you will, as you move through them. Meaning that the easiest way, perhaps, to get to your goals is to think about, what have I done in the past? What have I liked in the past? So the first exercise, My Favorite Things, is over on page 14. And in this exercise, we're asking people to just connect with things that they like. That for some people, that's a starting place, to just write out what do you like. And if you look at the example at the top of the page, it's clearly things that aren't really big. They aren't big things. Some of them can be very small things, but we want people to start thinking about what makes life good and enjoyable. And then a little bit beyond that, perhaps, is the idea of picking out the kernels down at the bottom of page 14. And this is where we ask people to think about activities that they used to enjoy doing that they don't do anymore, and to begin to think about, well, what are the pieces and parts of those activities? And I'm not going to go through that in detail now, but perhaps during the discussion period, that's something that you can do, is get into how do you get people to think about what are the pieces and parts of an activity as a way, something that I used to do, as a way to connect with something that I might do in the future. So that's section 1, my past. Section 2 is currently. What's currently going on in my life? And to get to this, we use the House of Living Well. And if you look at the House of Living Well, or any house for that matter, a house has 3 different basic areas to it. It's got the foundation, the middle part that you live in, and it's got the roof structure that goes over the top. And we look at each of these, and we look at the House of Living Well as a way to help people think about how things are today, how things are for them, how things are for their lives. So if we work through each of these areas of the house, we start with the foundation, and here's where we connect in again with those basics of quality of life: food, safety, and shelter. That sometimes when those things are not solid for people, they need to be setting goals and working toward those kinds of issues. And they're not small. Sometimes they're the most difficult things. And once those things are in place, people can work on other kinds of aspects of themselves and quality of life. Okay? So that's the foundation. In the middle of the house, the part that we live in, we have that divided into 5 different areas to represent 5 different areas of a person's life and or even the person themselves. And so we can kind of think about each of us as having a social, a physical, a spiritual, an intellectual, and an emotional part of ourselves. If we divide up ourselves that way, it helps us to think a little bit about, well, who am I? What am I like in this way? If you look at the House of Living Well that's on page 15, each of those areas are kind of divided up to be about the same size. But in reality, each of us emphasizes those areas a little bit differently. So think of the person who we might think about as a very social person. They might, if they were to draw out the inside of the house, of their House of Living Well, they might draw that social area really large, because they put a lot of time and a lot of energy into the social area. Alternatively, an athlete. An athlete would draw which area really large? Probably the physical. Okay? So you can kind of think about, and I ask people as we go through this to think about, if you were to draw your House of Living Well on the inside, what is your best balance? And the questions in the group exercise that's over on page 17, the questions there are, which 1 or 2 areas do you tend to emphasize? That is, which ones get your time and resources? Or which ones should get your time and resources if you're really at your